want to go back and move back to Connecticut. Where the this is coming from? And she's being very hypocritical because she always saying that I'm the one, never talk about what I think. I really want to pick up.
To be fair, it is kind of crazy because obviously, you know, one episode we've got him talking about going back to Bulgaria. The next minute now, and then in that same episode, she had a whole hissy fit about it. And then we now move on to her doing what? Talking about going to Connecticut and hasn't even spoke to Georgie about it. And then this guy is literally being blindsided in front of her family, so much to the point where he has to just act as if everything's okay when it's not.
Argument in the front of the family, so I need to act that I'm okay with that. Most of the time when she decides something and she really wanted, she's in a way, her way or a highway. If you disrespect it, then my opinion doesn't matter to her.
I do wonder though, does he try and mirror her behavior? Does he try and mirror her behavior because he's saying that his opinion isn't respected? Is that why he doesn't bother going to gain her or to find out her opinion on things because he doesn't care to want to respect it? He doesn't care to want to value, he doesn't care to want to hear it? Is that what's really going on now with these two? That they are both in a position where they're just happy to disrespect each other because neither one of them value each other's opinions anymore. And they both literally live in a marriage where they're both doing their own thing, but then also have a complaint about it. The calamity here is crazy.
Important to spend quality time with my dad right now. He hasn't been feeling well. He just got diagnosed with cancer and had some surgeries.
First and foremost, obviously, sorry to hear about her father, you know what I mean? And I hope things can obviously progress well for him. But the thing that I found interesting is obviously we start off this episode here with Darcey expressing about, of course, her father's cancer, but then we move on to Darcey and Stacey having a conversation with their father. And instead of trying to show him less stress in his life, they just continue adding more stress in his life, especially when it comes to Darcey and George's relationship. But let's get into it.
You have to learn not to take me into your conversations.
Why can't he just be accountable to you?
Now, just to clarify, when he says you need to learn to not take me into your conversations, because in the most recent episode, we obviously saw Darcey show a screenshot of the fact that whenever she needs to ask Georgie for anything, whether that be rent was the example that was shown, Georgie would not respond, so therefore she would then send him another message, but then in that message, she would then add her father into the conversation. That would then obviously force Georgie to have to then reply. And it's crazy because obviously Darcey should be taking her relationship issues into her own hands and trying to figure out a way around them rather than putting her father inside of those messages and pretty much causing him stress that he doesn't need, especially at a time in his life where he's focusing on one, still being a dad, two, still focusing, I guess, on his businesses, and also, you know, most importantly, focusing on his on his current cancer treatments that obviously he's been having, because from what I understand here, he's just had surgery as well. So you would think his daughters would want to give him less stress, but instead of giving him less stress, what are they doing? Psst. Ridiculous behavior.
I told you this was going to happen, right? When you got married. And you said, don't worry, I can handle it. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. Maybe.
And the matter of fact is, she's been saying that, and guess what? You don't know what you're doing. She's never known what she's doing. She never will know what she's doing. You know, the only thing that she knows, well, they both know what to do, the sisters, is just to give their dad headaches.
He's got something in the future that he's planning for.
That's what I feel sometimes.
Darcey always sharing, you know, the problem with her father, but it's hard because she always two sides of the story. I know Darcey's side of the story. It's always going to be like she's innocent and.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, her father obviously told her that this is what you're supposed, you know, this was going to happen. Obviously, Darcey doesn't seem to be taking like much accountability for that, to be honest with you. But obviously, Georgia does make the point that, hey, right now it feels like as if you're trying to turn your family against me because you're telling your father these things about us from your perspective. And I know your perspective is going to be something, it's going to be a perspective that's going to work in your favor. And it's not going to be a perspective where you're going to be saying things in a way where, you know, it can be fair to either one of us. And interesting enough, Georgie did bring up the point that when he speaks about his relationship to his family, he always tells them the good things, the positive things about his relationship. But when it comes to Darcey now, he feels as if she never says anything positive about their relationship to his father. He believes that, you know, it's always to put him in a bad light, so therefore he can be disliked. But Darcey says, no, I just tell him the things that obviously we need improvement on. And I can see Darcey's point of view, but at the same time, I can also understand George's point of view, because really and truly, if you're going to tell your family all these things about us that we need to improve, but yet when you tell them these things, you're painting them in the way of me being the villain, well, guess what? It means your family's less likely going to ever want to like me, because they're always going to see me as what? As a villain. But of course, Darcey isn't going to see that. Darcey isn't going to process that, okay? She's going to process it how she wants to process it. Because the grand scheme of it is this, and this is something that her father was basically trying to tell her. You decided to marry this guy even though the warnings were there, okay? And you told me that you've got this. You telling me you've got this means I shouldn't be involved in any type of way. I shouldn't be getting seated in anything. It tells me that you and Georgie are going to be able to build a good way of communicating. So therefore, anything that you go through, you can deal with it together. Not deal with it by coming to me and saying this and that. So this is why I do respect and prefer George's way of not telling his business to his family. Obviously, his reasons behind it, can't say I'm a big fan of the reasons, but I can understand him not wanting to do that, you know, because really, truly, as a man, you're going to want to solve your relationship issues between you and your wife. You're not going to want to bring in your family or make them feel anything bad about your wife, because whenever you bring your wife around your family, you want your family to always have their arms open to them, like a warm welcome. So for him, he's going to get the treatment of, oh, maybe dad's going to judge me now because he now knows these things about me. But for her, she's always going to get the treatment of, oh, look, it's Darcey, the one that my son always tells me lovely things about. But then here's the kicker, though. In the most recent episode, what happened? When they left Bulgaria, Darcey obviously left Georgie by himself, because obviously she was in a mood. And therefore, when Georgie came to saying goodbye to his sister and I guess her husband and friends or whatever, she wasn't there. So the maddest thing about it is that Darcey actually ended up painting a bad picture by herself to his sibling, okay? Meanwhile, that's Darcey doing it by herself because she's that kind of clown. Meanwhile, when it comes to him now, she's painting this picture of him by her word. But at the same time, though, it doesn't mean, but by the same time, the one thing that I will say is this, is that Georgia needs to also be aware that the fact that Darcey's father even said to Darcey, you need to be careful, tells us 1,000 words. And that tells us that he's obviously been watching you. He's obviously paid attention to your behavior. And therefore, he's also very cautious about you because of his own observations. So to be fair, there is the part where the dad does have his own observation of him as well. So, and that is slightly different. But then again, though, his observation can definitely be swayed by the way his daughter portrays her husband, because that's always going to be a big factor. Because parents know that we don't always see, that they're not always going to see everything that happens in their child's relationship. So they'll have a feeling based on what they see, but then what their child tells them is what's key. And Darcey doesn't help the situation in any shape or form. Well, the question is, though, are these two going to end up at some point finally getting a divorce? I mean, listen, at the beginning of the episode, Darcey apologized to him for bringing up the D word, that being divorce. But then in the same light said, I guess if things don't work out, then maybe we may have to divorce. I was like, what? Make it make sense, but you can't make sense out of freaking stupidity. But nonetheless, though, let me know what you're thinking down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, peace.